Welcome to the Feeding Our Young podcast. Have you ever heard the phrase, nurses eat their young? Feeding Our Young is more than a podcast, it's a movement. It's the desire to see new nurses of all ages be supported and uplifted by their peers. And it starts with me. It starts with you. So join host Eric Miller, registered nurse of nearly 20 years and adjunct clinical instructor, and today's honoured guest, me, Becky Love-Kerley, and be ready to have your life uplifted so you can, in turn, uplift others. Welcome to the Feeding Our Young podcast.
Hello and welcome to this episode of the Feeding Our Young podcast. So I'm going to open up straight away with a little caveat. This episode is airing sometime late February, I believe. And as it stands right now, we are in Christmas week, the wonderful Christmas week. And I bring that up for a reason because today, just like every day that I get to sit down and talk with amazing human beings, I am in studio with just the most amazing, amazing person. I cannot wait for you to hear all the many things that she would like to talk about, the questions that I have to pick her brain. It'll probably just be a 5-parter, no big deal. So settle in, relax, and be ready to speak with my friend who is also an E.L.F. Yeah, we'll talk about that later. My E.L.F. friend, Becky. Becky, welcome to studio. How are you this fine? Well, let's see. Morning and evening.
Yeah, we're doing a crazy timey-wimey thing here, aren't we? Yes, I'm really well. Thank you very much, Eric. Yes, great to be with you and to meet you finally.
I know this is. I'm like, I straight away. I'm like, hello, new friend. Let's chat about what we're about to do here. I just love meeting people, and I love that we have some mutual. It's just. I don't know. This is the part of the job that amazes me is like how I get to meet people. Like there in no other way would I run into you or meet you in real life. And that's because I feel like you are some distance away from me. So without me flapping my gums anymore, Becky, go ahead and introduce yourself. Who are you and where is home for you?
Hi, so my name is Becky Love-Kerley. I'm sure your listeners can guess, I am based in the UK. So I'm originally from the Midlands, which is, I guess, maybe you've heard of Birmingham, but I grew up sort of near Birmingham in a place called Leicester. But now I live in the much sunnier climate of the southwest in Somerset of the UK.
Which I hope to visit someday. The missus and I have it on our bucket list.
I would strongly recommend it, definitely. I wouldn't want to move back to the Midlands. It's far more industrial, but the southwest is... It does have some industry to it, but it's mostly green trees and fields and things.
Oh, I love it. Well, with that, I would like to open in our traditional manner, meaning I have some straightforward questions to ask you. The first of which is being, what degrees do you hold? Is that even a thing in the UK? And where did you obtain them?
So I went to the University of Plymouth, which is... do you guys call it college? Is that what you call your sort of...
Yes, call it.
Yep.
Yes. The names of, you go to, like, I teach at Gonzaga University, but for the most part, everybody's like, yes, I'm going to college. They don't say they go to university.
I see. Yeah. So, I went to the University of Plymouth, although I never actually went to Plymouth, the place, only on my graduation, bizarrely. So I went to a satellite site in Taunton, where I lived at the time. And I don't actually hold a degree, which is a bit of a tricky situation, really. When I trained in 2006, which is quite a long time ago now, there was a diploma version, which is you're still on the same nursing register, you're still paid exactly the same, everything is exactly the same. However, if you want to top up to a degree, you now have to jump through a few more hoops. So if I wanted to do a master's level degree or anything higher, there are ways of kind of doing like a 2-in-1 jump up, but I wish I'd have done the degree at the end. I should have just did the extra kind of, I think it was maybe 2 or 3 modules. It was about 6 more months, and I just thought, no, do you know what? I'm done. I'm done with
I put my time in.
Yes. So unfortunately, I only have a diploma. So I do have a few degree modules of other stuff, which I'll bring up later. But yeah, I am a diploma level registered nurse in the UK.
Wonderful. And I am going to strike that word only from your vernacular. We have a saying here too as well, because a lot of people say, well, I'm only a nurse's assistant, or our levels go associate degree and then bachelor's or baccalaureate, then master's and doctorate if you go on. And so a lot of people are like, I'm only an associate's degree. No, you're a nurse. You sit for the same boards, the exams, and we'll talk about what that looks like in your neck of the woods as well. But with that, what 3 words, is the question I love to ask everybody, what 3 words did you choose to describe nursing school?
So my 3 words are feeling fraudulent, like I didn't belong, proud, and collaborative.
I love those, and I love that very first pair of words, as the case may be. And I have a hunch we're going to be talking quite a bit about that here in this first episode, so buckle in, everybody. But with that, there was a question that I didn't see an answer to, so I'm curious to see what you're going to say to this. And it's the other thing I ask everybody. What are 3 of your favorite songs in life right now?
Well, I like a really wide mix. So I like Iron Maiden and Pantera, that kind of music, but I also like a lot of world music, so Bhangra and kind of Bollywood music I really like. Reggae, which is hated by most people in my wider circle. One song that I always come back to time and time again, and it's really old, is called Sweet Euphoria by Chris Cornell, who used to be in, oh my gosh, what was his band called? Oh my God, I can't remember. He sang Black Hole Sun.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, that band. I can't remember what the band was called because I didn't really particularly... Audio Slave? Oh gosh, I'm really dating myself and showing my utter musical non-knowledge. Yeah, Sweet Euphoria by Chris Cornell. It's just him and his guitar, and there's something just so beautiful about it.
I cannot wait to hear that. And the reason why I ask these questions is because then I like to add those songs, or at least, whatever is given to me, to this wonderful little playlist that we have.
I see. Nice.
And so, yeah, it's about 16 hours of music and counting, I think, right now, comprised literally of everybody's favorite songs, because I feel like music is a language in and of itself, and it speaks a lot towards you are as a person. So.
For sure. Okay, so the second one then would be maybe Aerosmith, Pink. I love that track. I bought a harmonica specifically to learn how to play the introduction because I needed that in my life. I should really choose something classical now. I learnt to play the violin when I was 8, so that was a very big part of my life growing up. Maybe I should say Spring by Vivaldi, because
very nice.
That's got a very special connection with me. My father used to love me playing that piece of music, and I played it at his funeral many, many, many years later. So, yeah, that's always going to be a special piece of music for me.
Well, we're just going to jump right off that sentimental springboard, as it were, and get right into a very ham-handed segue here into, you mentioned your father here. So if you'd like to talk about, there's a few questions that I can ask that bring that back. But let's start with that one that if you could have a meal with one person, present, past, or future, who would that be and why?
Well, I did pick my father, who sadly passed away in 2006. And that was the same time as I started my nursing as well, in the same, very, very same month. He was a very typical Midland working class father, which I appreciate probably doesn't mean much to someone in the US. So not very demonstrative with his feelings, very kind of guarded. But he was so proud that I'd gotten into university to train as a nurse. Strange thing was I heard about that mostly after he'd already passed away. Everyone was telling me, gosh, he was so proud that you'd got in. So I just loved to have the opportunity to tell him how it sort of went and how it's going years later.
Oh my goodness. That's just so incredible, and we've kind of touched on it. Sorry to hear of your dad's passing, and it's been a while ago, but that doesn't necessarily take away any of the pain and the grief, right?
It's I think grief is a really interesting phenomenon. Somebody summed it up to me beautifully by saying grief is like a balloon in a room. Sometimes it's really small, and you can almost ignore it, and it's just sitting in the corner of the room doing nothing. You can carry on with your daily life. sometimes the balloon fills the entire room, you are squashed by it, you are totally taken away by it, and for no reason it can suddenly inflate, and then again for no reason it can deflate. And that is the most perfect analogy that someone told me, so I'm sharing it with you, and maybe it helps, maybe it doesn't, but that's definitely how bereavement has felt for me.
I really appreciate that analogy. It's one I have not heard in my many years of, because I am very passionate about grief and navigating grief as well, given my own past and things of that nature. But wow, just incredible. And while we're on the subject of family and of grief, there was another question you gave a very poignant answer to, and that was, what day in your life would you like to relive?
Yeah, so just looking back now, I'd love to relive my wedding day, which was 2017. It was one of the happiest days of my life, like I'm sure most people, I would hope, feel the same. My sister and my mum have both passed away since then, and the photos that we have of all of us together just captures some of my absolute most treasured memories. Yeah, we're talking about this. I've had a lot of bereavement in the last few years, but that's just really brought home to me how fortunate I feel I've been to have had that love and support of my family, because the older I get, the more I see that this experience isn't shared by everyone, and it's such a formative foundation. But I think it's one of those strange things that you only really realise how much heart and support you got from it when you realise it isn't there. I remember after my father passed away, he was the kind of person that in my life, if I were stranded in 200 miles away at 2:00 in the morning, I'd be able to ring home and go, "Oh, Dad, come and pick me up." And yes, he would moan and whinge and be very grumpy about it, but he would be there, because that is the utter sort of unconditional support. And only when I realised that wasn't there did I realise kind of how much strength it gives you during the rest of the time. And some people have never had that, and only sort of by the lack of it do you then realise, gosh, how differently things would be if I hadn't have ever experienced that. Yes.
Oh, I just love that. And one of the things that I love to espouse myself is that constant reminder. And even if you're years removed from whatever trauma, whatever grief, whatever death of a loved one happened for you, regardless of how much time has passed, you still every once in a while need that reminder to not take for granted any single day you have with your loved ones.
Absolutely.
And you get caught up in the day-to-day, the busyness, the everything. And it's always good to just pause for a minute. And like right now, I've got 4 beautiful children. I've got my wife. I have friends. I have family. All these things that we sometimes literally take for granted. Even when you're someone who shouldn't take it for granted, having experienced the death of one of my own children, now the death of both of my parents, and you still there's still those moments where you're just caught up in the hustle and bustle, and you have to take a breather and go, you know what? I miss the ones that are gone, and I'm grateful for the ones that are still here.
Yeah, I'm really sorry to hear that in your life too.
Oh.
It's I can't imagine what that must feel like, but it's a real feeling for lots of people, and it's just something that everybody in humanity can share, I think. And if you don't understand grief, it's because you've been exceptionally lucky to have not felt it, I think.
Yes, I agree. And would you agree also, we're kind of dovetailing on the subject of grief here, but would you also agree that, because part of the issue too, I think, is that in our modern society, back in the day, way back in the day, grief, death was a more common thing, right? Children died more often, tuberculosis, things that we now have common, quote unquote, common cures for. Family members died, all the things at very young ages. And now we've kind of prolonged life. And we've also, we've got all these advances. So death not only becomes a thing that doesn't happen as frequently, but then when it does happen, I feel like we're less prepared. Would you agree for that?
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. And I think that sort of feeling of, no, but this can't be happening. How can all the advances that we have, how can this still be the case? And I definitely felt that at the passing of my sister. I work in operating theatres and have done since my entire career. And I just felt so frustrated and cheated that, I help in the hopeful cure of so many patients suffering from cancer, but I was utterly powerless to do anything for her. And that it's just really difficult to come to terms with, isn't it? And I think, like you just said, we have a lot less, hopefully, a lot less experience of death now. So we're just less prepared for it. And maybe faith has something to do with it. I have a good friend who is a nurse who has an incredibly strong faith, and she's lost a huge amount of people in her life, and her faith sees her through. Now, I don't have a similar faith, and I don't believe in a religion in the same way that she does. But seeing the amount of strength that she gets from that, I can't say I feel jealous necessarily, but I think she has this something else that she has to get her kind of to get through things, which perhaps maybe in a less secular society, historically, maybe that was something that people turned to, perhaps.
Yes. Excellent point. And as I understand it, I'm not sure if the same can be said of your area, your neck of the woods, but in America, one of the, you go far enough back, one of the traditions was the family would gather after church. Everybody was church going, most everybody's church going, and then they would go to the cemetery and they would spend time with their deceased loved ones. And it was just it was a spiritual thing. It was a family thing. It was a connected thing. And that has long since fallen by the wayside.
Yeah,
so
definitely.
I imagine those things as like, what would it be like if that was our modern society? I don't know.
I guess it brings it. The only thing I can compare it to, and this is going to be an awful thing to say, I think perhaps for some people, the only experience I have with America is Orlando and Disney World. So I've got a very narrow view. She's thinking, where is she going with this?
No, not commercial at all. No way.
No. Absolutely 100% realistic. And the World Pavilions in Epcot, you have the Mexico Pavilion, and they have a big sort of Day of the Dead celebration inside there. So this is turning around. This is how I'm linking it. And perhaps because death was seen as a lot more just a part of life and very much talked about, we definitely don't have that here. There is still, I feel, a huge taboo. It wasn't that many years ago that doctors wouldn't say the word cancer. They'd say, the big C, because don't say the word, don't mention death. But I think the more you see it in your own life, and the more we see it, like I say, fortunately, I work in operating theatres, and we don't have that happen too often, fortunately. But the more you see it, the more you realise it is another part of life, and there can be such a thing as a not a good death, but perhaps something that is preferable to something else. Maybe.
Yes.
I don't know.
Yeah.
Getting very deep in the whole kind of philosophical stuff now.
I'm like, oh, dear audience. Apparently I wasn't kidding when we said we're going to be a 5-parter. We're 17 minutes in, and we're here just deep diving on death, grief, and everything involved.
It's cheerful. These guys from the UK, they're so cheerful.
Oh, I love it. No, it's fantastic. You know what? And we'll just continue with this conversation here, because I can see the natural progression of where this is going to go. You talk about your sister and how that impacted you. I'm looking at you, and you seem fairly young to have a sister die. So what would you like to share about your family, and what does that dynamic look like?
Well, I was, like I mentioned before, incredibly lucky to have a wonderful, supportive family. I grew up with just myself and my mum and dad at home, but I do have 3 much older sisters. The oldest, who's 22 years older than me, then the next one being 20, and my youngest sister was 17 years older. So all old enough, really, to be my parents. And I remember thinking at one point, I want to see my birth certificate. Maybe there's some exciting secret but it's not. My mum was my mum, and my sisters were my sisters. But, when you hear those stories of people being brought up mine was just legit regular. They weren't my sisters. But looking back at that, it feels like I had the best of both worlds, really. So I was sort of spoilt as an only child, but having older sisters that could take me out places and do stuff, which was fantastic. One of my sisters has children, only one of them. So I was still able to play like the family games around Christmas time, that sort of thing. But yeah, my youngest sister passed away in 2017, and she was only 50 due to lung cancer. And like I mentioned before, the biggest things I remember feeling was just so frustrated that there was nothing that we could do. I remember when she very first told us that she had lung cancer, and I thought, that's fine. You just have a surgery and cut out one lobe. Sure, fine, no problem.
Yeah,
and
ready
then
to go.
that's fine. But it was inoperable, which was just the biggest surprise to me. Perhaps because being based in theatre the whole time. Nothing's inoperable, right? We operate all the time. And even though there'd been lots of cancer in my family, that was the first time that something hadn't been, I don't want to say treatable, but there was nothing to be done. She did have some chemo. It was a really strange time in my life when she was diagnosed, because I went from being the youngest sister to the sort of perceived authority on all things medical. And I'm sure a lot of your listeners kind of know how that feel. You know, you get anyone in your family or even strangers who find out you're a nurse, and they'll start divulging all sorts of things like, oh, look at my weird rash. And you're like, whoa, no, pull that down. I'm not a dermatologist, thank you. And, you know, I know a lot about the surgical removal of cancer tissues and that sort of thing, but absolutely nothing whatsoever about the area of oncology and sort of the disease processes involved in that. And I just felt that I was being looked at as someone who would understand everything about what was going on, and I felt like I knew absolutely nothing. And I felt really selfish, just wanting to be a sister struggling with dealing with this awful family tragedy. But I had to be, I don't know, the fount of knowledge on what's happening and what's going to happen. Yeah. And I just knew nothing. And I felt incredibly jealous of my family's ignorance of some of the things, especially when the GP, that's general practitioner, that would be the person that deals with you outside of hospital, they were talking about syringe drivers. Now, I knew, my heart dropped. I knew, well, this is palliative medicine. There's nothing else going to be happening. But my second thought, I felt so selfish thinking about it, was I knew that this meant that my wonderful, vibrant, chatty sister was soon going to be gone, if not actually just, passed away, but that side of her was not going to be there. Yeah. And I felt so selfish in thinking, oh my goodness, I'm going to have to explain what this means to everybody, because they're not going to know that this means this is the end. But fortunately, we had a fantastic GP who said, okay, guys, I want you to make sure that you talk to her about the things you want to talk to her about, because there won't be much longer left. And I just felt so relieved that he had taken that burden away from me. And I think probably as nurses, we do end up taking on a large emotional burden of that kind of caregiving, which is different when you're being paid to do it at work. There's a separation, isn't there? And I think it's probably something very common in our global family of nurses that we do that, the extra emotional burden, the kind of feeling, and you want to nurse your family because that's what you are that's what you're good at. But sometimes that is not the right role for you, I think. It's really difficult.
Yes, and that's exactly the word I wanted to pull around on that, is that, it's okay to say, this is not my role at this time. From a shallow standpoint, I would, whenever we went to a doctor's visit with the kids, I always told my wife ahead of time, I said, do not tell them I'm a nurse. Don't do it. And
there's an assumption then of your A, knowledge, B, this is how you should act. And we use different terminology, we use different phrases, we speak to people differently when they're a nurse. And being in hospital with my husband, recently he had E.L.F, he had his gallstone, he had a E.L.F, he had his gallbladder taken out. I sort of wanted everyone to know that I was a nurse, because I felt, even though this was not my direct colleagues, but colleagues that I did know vaguely, so I felt, I don't know, seeing him with a patient gown on was just so bizarre. That kind of crossing over of work and home. Normally there's a really lovely separation, but there wasn't here, and that felt very strange. Very strange.
Yeah, and it is surreal, and that's where you say, okay, going into these appointments, I'm a father. I'm not a nurse. And like you said, otherwise, A, there's an assumption, and B, sometimes then you have to act as a translator, for lack of a better term. You know what I mean? Yeah. Oh, well, what she means is, you know what I mean? I'm like, well, what does that mean? Or you'd say, I don't know. This isn't my specialty. I have no idea. But also then there's a kind of the feeling of, maybe it's just me, but the feeling of guilt. Well, if something goes wrong, or if he has any complications, I feel like I didn't talk him into it. So I was absolutely really being extra cautious not to say what I think, oh, this is a good idea or that's a bad idea. I wanted him to come up with the decision of having surgery, because, that burden of guilt
I would have felt that burden of guilt, which is really silly because he's an incredibly intelligent person who can absolutely make his own choices, but I would have felt responsible.
Strangely enough.
Yeah.
And yet there's
Yeah.
people listening to you going, yep, been there, felt that,
Yeah,
100%.
And I think it's probably something very common to all of us, or all of us that choose caregiving as our job. I think in the UK that is maybe different, slightly different. I don't really know much about the American health system. We obviously have our idolised NHS, which is wonderful, and I'm exceptionally proud to work for the NHS. But with that comes a lot of, I don't know, kind of almost toxic heroism is a word that I'd like to describe it. You're seen as the kind of little Florence there, very diligently, throwing all your life away while you go to work and you look after everyone, which, is sort of kind of true in a way. But I think we forget, or the nation almost forgets, that this is a degree level job. It is now. You can't do a diploma in anymore. That's why I'm super old. I've got the diploma, but now it's
super old.
Only degree level. So this is a degree level course. You are taught up to you go to a university. You are a degree educated person, and your role should be remunerated as such. And I don't know, like I said, I'm not sure about the American sort of system, but our nurses, when they qualify, you're kind of capped into a pay grade. So we start at about £31,000, which I think is about $41,000. Okay. So I think over the next sort of 2 or 3 years, you then each year you get an increment, and I think that maxes out at about $50,000. So comparative to other graduate sort of degree holders, your ceiling of earnings is very much capped, so it's difficult to break through that. And all NHS hospitals are the same. I think if you live in or around London, there is like a higher cost area supplement. So I don't think it's just about money, but I think there is definitely this feeling in the UK that nurses do it because of the love and because they're just so look at them, they're little Florence Nightingales off. And yes, I'm sure there is a little bit of that, but I think this is a profession and it should be treated as such. And I think we're still quite backwards in that, definitely in the UK. Again, I'm guessing in America that isn't quite the same because the health system doesn't look the same. But I am incredibly proud to work for the NHS, and without it, I can't imagine what our country would look like without it. But there are some drawbacks, I think, with that. We do have private healthcare, but it's not really. Most of us wouldn't know much about it unless we worked for it, I suppose.
Yes, and I that goes to the, which we're not going to spend our 4th episode of the 5-episode series here discussing the differences between the two healthcare systems. But I mean, there is that element of, it's very privatized here. Of course, we have our own issues in regards to that, and the rampant costs, that are unchecked, and insurance involvement and all of that, which is why some call for government oversight, which if it's our government, God help us all. You know what I mean? No offense to my administration and all the things, but being across the pond, I couldn't possibly comment. It seems difficult to navigate it, I think, from my very British view, reading your newspapers. I read the New York Times. Is it the New York Times? Yeah,
I don't know.
One of the standard papers of our country, for sure.
And that obviously, everybody has an agenda, right? Every news outlet, every podcast, dare we say it, everybody has an agenda, but it looks like it'd be a bit of a crazy whirlwind to navigate your system over there. I don't. I'm glad I don't have to do that.
Yes, and but you speak towards that toxic heroism, and I think there are still some similarities if you go far enough back in American healthcare, and with the whole, as I understand it, many healthcare systems were faith-based, right? I work for a Catholic-based, faith-based health system, and of course, you go far back enough, and it is that thought of servitude, and which is, I mean, 100%. That's what we nurses are. But however, now in this modern age, we all do need to, support our families and things of that nature. Yeah. And so
your mortgage isn't paid with love and diligence, is it?
No, unfortunately, no, they will not allow that as payment equal. But It's funny that you bring that up, though, because as far as that professionalism, and that's the word I'm going to use, because that's kind of the hot button topic as of this moment in our country, because from a federal national standpoint, there was a big hullabaloo that just happened when the federal government said, okay, there's this list of professions that are part of a professional list that can then borrow these higher amounts of money to go to college, which now costs more and all the things. And then the question is, which came first, the chicken or the egg? Is it do the universities charge more because students can borrow more, or do you have to borrow more because the university, all the things. And I'm sure that there's cases both ways. But the big thing that came out recently was then a lot of professions, there were many professions that with this administration, they decided to take off of that list. You can still borrow money, you just can't borrow the larger amounts, etc. And nursing was one of those professions. And and so then even though from a practical standpoint, okay, I see what you're saying, like, we don't necessarily, nursing shouldn't have to borrow, I think it's like $200,000 total is like the cap. Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah. You shouldn't
the listeners
have to borrow
can't
that
see
much
my
to become
face,
a
but
nurse.
it was just a giant, oh my.
And to be fair, depending on where you go, that is not, I have not heard, I'm sure there are universities where it would, if you went for a 4-year, I can think of a few that, I mean, the university I work for, the tuition's pretty high, but it's a private Jesuit university. Public universities, it's still it's still pretty costly to get a 4-year degree. The cheapest route is a 2-year community college associate's degree. That's typically the cheapest. So irregardless, $200,000 is a large amount to. I can't even imagine borrowing that to become a nurse. I just don't see that being a thing.
Yeah, well, with our nursing salary, that would take 3, 6, 9, 12. That takes 6 years to pay that off.
Yes. And that from a practical standpoint, it makes sense. But there was still the public perception that, and a lot of nurses, myself included, right out of the chute, were like, oh, so we're no longer, you know what I mean, one of the professional fields. And so I think there's always kind of that give and take, that tug, that desire for, acknowledgement, especially in these modern times post-COVID, right? Where, healthcare maybe is not as trusted as before.
Yeah.
And science and rational thought. Anyway, I'm not going to go down that road as we go here.
So similar to the thing you just mentioned there makes me think of, so we introduced myself as an elf, which, yes, is very Christmassy and all very lovely. But that came about because my role, which E.L.F stands for Embedded Learning Facilitator, I do not have bells on my shoes or pointy ears. Unfortunately, that would be cool. But yeah, my role was originally designed to kind of give clinical guidance to newer theatre practitioners, sort of nurses, and we say ODPs. Now, I don't think you have the qualification ODP, Operating Department Practitioner.
No.
So that is a degree course, exactly the same as nursing. It's 3 years, but you are trained in the role of scrub, anaesthetics and recovery. So it's like a theatre, I guess you might call it theatre nurse, but that's quite offensive to ODPs because they're not nurses, they're ODPs, but yeah, it's a theatre practitioner. We had our response to... stop. So yeah, my role was as a response to that, and we had an increased number of internationally educated nurses. So these are very highly qualified nurses, just used to a different theatre environment. A lot of my colleagues come from Nigeria and other African countries. So their theatre work and their set-up sort of hierarchy is very, very different. And as the time sort of progressed, it became very clear to me that this staff group were incredibly capable, but just needed more pastoral support and sort of acclimatisation to our ways of working, which is very different. I think our surgeons are seen as human and can be challenged, and it's as a theatre practitioner, especially when you're working in the role of scrub nurse, it's our responsibility to say, we are a swab short, we are a suture needle short, whatever. You need this. No, you can't cut that swab in half. No, this is how it is. Whereas perhaps in their country of origin, the surgeon's word is law. There is no, they will do whatever. Whereas, so that kind of makes somebody less likely to disagree, and they perhaps don't feel empowered to challenge, whereas our surgeons are expecting that challenge. So they might try and push it sometimes, but they know actually the challenge is going to come. And if the challenge doesn't come, that's when you can get yourself into kind of dicey, difficult areas, really. So it wasn't really, yes, they needed some educational kind of input, but actually it was more encouragement to feel empowered, to challenge, to know your worth and your role specifically. And it's not just you need to tell them you haven't got enough swabs. You have to tell them you haven't. There's no kind of, you're protecting their registration rather than they will tell you how to do your job. So that was a really big difference, I think.
Interesting. And I mean, since we're talking about it, let's just dive right into that bit of the pool here. But that embedded learning facilitator, that is a relatively, I think if I picked that up correctly in what you sent me, that's a relatively newer role, correct?
Yeah, I can't possibly say I'm the first one ever. I'm sure there are different. We basically have practice educators in our environment, but they mostly, the ones in our trust anyway, mostly work outside of the theatre environment, liaising with nursing and ODP and nursing associate students. So that the nursing associate bit sounds a little bit similar to the role that you were mentioning earlier. So this, embedded learning facilitator role came up as a teaching role. Previously, I've worked my entire career in one hospital, one theatre department, so I'm very aware how blinkered I am, but I also enjoy kind of knowing the department like the back of my hand. So yeah, it's been 16 years since I've been there. So I started as a newly qualified nurse, forming the scrub role for about 9 years. Then I went back to university part-time whilst working to complete a degree module in anaesthetic care, which meant that I could act as like an anaesthetic practitioner. So I think maybe you guys call them anaesthesia techs, or I don't quite know what the role.
And I'm not, honestly, I'll candidly, I don't exactly know that. Because there's when it comes to anesthesiology, we have the actual doctors, we have nurse practitioners, ARNPs, and they focus on strictly anesthesiology, strictly, OR, surgical, and all of that. Yeah. And so that's there's just different levels of role or levels of education within that role, I think would be the best way to summarize that.
So going back to university meant that I could work as a nurse, but in the anaesthetic room, obviously, basically assisting we call them anaesthetists.
Yes.
One less syllable, but I'm sure they're the same, the same as yours.
Yes. Yes.
And then, basically this kind of secondment, which, would you use the word secondment over there? So kind of...
Never heard it in my life, Becky, until today.
Well, what a word.
So what is secondment, man?
Secondment. It sounds so funny when you say...
I'm sorry. Yeah, I should not. I was like, I shouldn't even go there.
And then I went... American secondment? No, I can't. I'm not even going to try. That's ridiculous. So basically, it's kind of like a try before you buy sort of thing, which sounds... Oh, yeah, it sounds great, doesn't it? Turns out it's not good for me. I didn't enjoy the not knowing. Anyway, so we're jumping ahead. So a secondment is, we're trying out this new role. It's going to involve this, or it could be an old role, whatever. Do this job for a year or 6 months or 18 months or whatever, but you're guaranteed your old job back at the end of it. You might have to have your old job back at the end of it if the role either isn't needed anymore, or I don't know, they don't like you, or you don't like it, or whatever. So secondment, testing out. And I thought, I really love doing anaesthetics. I love anaesthetics. So if I had to go back to that, that's fine. But I've always loved education side of things. I love supporting students, and I love passing on hopefully my passion about the area that I work in to new people. And kind of, there's nothing better, I don't think, than seeing someone improve at something, or just get the thing, the technical skill, the whatever, and you can just that lovely. It must be like maybe teaching a child to read. I don't have children, so I couldn't say, but that kind of, they've got it. Look, they're doing the thing. That is just I love that feeling, and nothing compares to that for me. So I thought, well, this role sounds fantastic, and it's so in the UK our nursing stuff is band 5. That's band 5 nurse, kind of newly qualified, and regular nurse. And if you want to basically earn any other money or become managerial, that sort of thing, then perhaps you might be paid band 6, which is the next kind of pay bracket.
Okay.
So I'd been doing my role for a long time. I knew I didn't want to go into management because it just seems to take you away from the clinical stuff, which was never really something that, I don't think that's where my skill set lies, and I don't think I'd enjoy it as much either. So doing like a a more senior role that wasn't like team leader management was just perfectly suited me. So I thought, I'm going to give it a go. It's a secondment. That'll be fine. Oh, wow. I am not good with change. I am not good with... I think change is okay, but not knowing, not being able to say, this is what's definitely going to happen in a minute. No, I know that life isn't like that. And nursing definitely isn't. But it was about month 4 out of my 18-month secondment. And I was at a point where I was thinking, okay, even if the answer's no, I'd rather be told, no, you can't have it, than yes, you'll probably get it at the end. And I did the 18-month secondment. In fact, it was almost 24 months by the time we had a bit of a recruitment freeze at work at the time. So it was all difficult.
Goodness.
So it tied me in knots doing a secondment. I will never, ever, ever do another one because I need to know what's happening. And it was a really interesting... I actually went back into counselling, not because of it, but the feelings that kind of insecurity brought up for me. Wow, will never be done again. Am I any good at this? Is this working? Am I fulfilling the goal? Oh my gosh, it was just the worst. Never do it again.
My goodness.
But the role is fantastic, and I love the role. And we've got a saying in the UK, like, don't honk your own horn. So don't sort of, speak well about yourself. But it is a bit honking my own horn. But I think at the end of my secondment, they actually have now expanded the role. So there's now 4 or 5 of us elves. So I can't take all the credit for that. But I'd like to think that I at least kind of tried out what could be successful. And now the role has been taken up by lots of the other theatre departments. So that's really cool. So I'm not the only elf. We have... I don't know, what's the collective noun for elf?
Elves.
A jingle of elves. A jingle of elves. That's what we have.
I like that. Murder of Crows, jingle of elves. That's it. Well, I'm looking at the time here, Becky, and, I do joke with you guys about this being a 5-part episode, but this very well may end up into a 3-parter. We'll see what happens. But you don't want to miss what's coming up, because we'll take a step back, Becky, if it's all right with you. We'll jump into episode 2, and in episode 2, we'll take a step back. We'll talk about what it's like to go to nursing school in Britain, in the UK, and what that looks like, kind of just the nuts and bolts of it, but then specifically how that was for you. We'll talk a little bit more about your career. And then you guys, whether it's the 2nd episode or 3rd, if there's 3, one of the big topics that we're going to hit on is imposter syndrome and various synonyms for that. So do not miss. Becky, are you ready to flip over to part B of the Becky experience?
Absolutely.
All right, you guys, we'll see you on the flip side. Here's what's happening on the next episode of Feeding Our Young.
Every single day is a school day, and if it's not, you've not learned anything that day. You need to find something you didn't know, 100%. And I remember having a student once who was a typical you couldn't tell her anything. Oh yeah, no, I already knew that. And I thought, you didn't. I know why you're saying that to me, because you don't want me to think that you didn't know something. When everything I'm telling you, you're then telling me, oh, yeah, I knew that. I was going to do that in a minute. I know why you're saying it. I totally know why you're saying it, because you want to appear. You don't want me to think, why didn't you do this thing? But it's very difficult. It's really difficult, and it makes me not trust you. It makes me not trust that you do know what's coming next, because you're trying so hard to pretend that you did. And every single day is learning, and we're never going to know everything about something.
Did you like today's episode of Feeding Our Young? Want to know more about the Feeding Our Young movement? Check out our website at feedingouryoung.org. Would you like to be featured on a future episode? Maybe have Eric bring his unique brand of encouragement to your nursing students or nurses? Please text us at 509-666-5636 or email us at info@feedingouryoung.org. We're so excited to have you return to hear our next honored guest. Be sure to follow us on YouTube, Instagram, Facebook, and TikTok at Feeding Our Young LLC. Again, that's username Feeding Our Young LLC. Until next time, Be encouraged and go find someone to encourage today.